Are the recent arrest of Jehovah's Witnesses across the globe persecution, or is it something else? Or does the truth lie somewhere in the middle? I'll tell you where and why they're being arrested and who's to blame for it. And we'll see if it's persecution like the governing body claims it is. I have 3 recent news stories from across the world about Jehovah's Witnesses getting arrested. The governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses, the men who run the organization, claim it is persecution. They portray it as being attacked for their faith. So let's look into these 3 stories and learn what is going on in the JW community. Let's see if the governing body is telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help them Jehovah. Did you know that Jehovah's Witnesses are being arrested in Ukraine? The December 10th edition of the European Times newspaper had a startling headline. It said, "Thousands of conscientious objectors in Ukraine under threat of 3-year prison terms." The article details a jump in investigations and convictions of conscientious objectors. The article says that since July of 2024, there has been a sharp increase. Between July and October, around 300 cases were investigated, with over 280 involving JWs. So far, 14 of those have been convicted. There is no mention of it on jw.org as of the recording of this video. The Ukrainian Constitution allows for freedom of religion, including the right to refuse military duty. Conscientious objectors can serve in civilian jobs instead. However, when Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, martial law was enacted. The Ukrainian Constitution states that in such circumstances, conscientious objections are not allowed. The Ukrainian Supreme Court ruled on June 13, 2024, after an Adventist had filed a lawsuit. The court ruled that conscientious objection is suspended during wartime. The constitutional duty to protect Ukraine overrides religious objections to military service. During peacetime, conscientious objectors can do alternative civilian service under military authority. Jehovah's Witnesses reject both military service and any alternative civilian service under military authority. JWs can do alternative service in non-military roles, but martial law and general mobilization was declared on February 24, 2022. This eliminated fixed-term military service and alternative civilian service provisions. All men 18 to 60 are eligible for military call-up and barred from leaving Ukraine. From February 2022 to July 2024, there were only 4 convictions of Jehovah's Witnesses. But between July and November of 2024, the number surged to 14 convictions. Ukraine has around 100,000 Jehovah's Witnesses, with thousands eligible for mobilization. Thousands could face imprisonment or be forced into hiding to avoid arrest. Due to the fact Ukraine is at war, conscientious objection is no longer an option. It's time for JWs to give to Caesar what is Caesar's, or become a wanted criminal. Isn't it unfortunate for the JWs in Ukraine that Russia invaded the country? But as many of you know, JWs have had a lot of trouble in Russia also. In Russia, the Jehovah's Witnesses organization has been banned for almost a decade now. The governing body would not cease distribution of literature deemed extremist by the Russian government. As a result, distributing Watchtower literature is now a criminal act. I covered this topic in another video, for which I'll put a link up here and in the description. In a December 9th article on lenta.ru, the most popular news website in Russia, this article appeared. A court sentenced 3 Jehovah's Witness women. Jehovah's Witnesses are a recognized extremist organization banned in Russia. It was recorded to lenta.ru by the court's press service. The women were found guilty for organization of the activities of an extremist organization. Their real terms were replaced with 2.5 years, 2 years, and 2 months of forced labor. All of the convicted persons will have 10% of their salaries withheld for the benefit of the state. After serving their main sentence, they will be subject to 6 months of restricted freedom. They actively spread the extremist beliefs of Jehovah's Witnesses among the population. Jehovah's Witnesses are free to meet, pray, sing, and discuss their beliefs. They simply cannot distribute literature or direct traffic to jw.org, deemed an extremist website. Such action is a criminal offense, resulting in arrest and prosecution. True persecution would look a lot different, as I pointed out in that older video. So when the governing body poses this as religious persecution, they are lying to their followers. Can an organization be held responsible for the acts of a single individual? Legally, it's a difficult question to answer, depending on liability and other factors. But one thing that has been made clear since the 2015 Australian Royal Commission investigation: the policies of the JW organization, led by the governing body, creates a safe haven for a certain group of individuals. These policies protect perpetrators of CSA from prosecution by legal authorities. Our last story comes from a November 1st article in Il Fatto Quotidiano, an Italian newspaper. A 41-year-old man in Florence will face a summary trial for sexual violence involving 7 young girls. The abuse occurred between 2014 and 2018. The alleged abuses occurred in his car, apartment, and during gatherings in the Kingdom Hall. The victims were persuaded that the abuse was a game and threatened to remain silent. The victims were 7 girls of foreign origin, born between 2004 and 2008. He exploited a relationship of trust with their parents. The investigation began in 2022 when some victims confided in each other about the abuse. Multiple complaints were filed after the first report. The accused used his position within the JW community to create bonds with parents and victims. He justified his actions to victims by claiming love for them. I wonder if this is what the organization means when they say to have agape love for each other. You might ask, how does the organization protect perpetrators like this from prosecution? In my last video, I talked about the Danish government investigating Jehovah's Witnesses. This was in part because of the secret Elder's Manual, the Shepherd the Flock of God book. In it, elders are told to report claims of such abuse to the organization's legal department, not authorities. They defend this action by citing Scripture, Deuteronomy 19:15 in particular. It says, One witness shall not rise against a man concerning any iniquity or any sin that he commits. By the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses the matter shall be established. Certainly one can see where the text can be interpreted to say you need more than one witness. And CSA is usually done in private without any witness other than the victim. The problem here is the context of the verse. You see, the Bible wasn't originally divided into chapters. This wasn't done until the 16th century. The scrolls were written as paragraphs, telling a narrative. When we look at the context of Deuteronomy 19, we see what they are talking about. Property disputes. The previous verse says this, "You shall not remove your neighbor's landmark, which the men of old have set, in your inheritance which you will inherit the land that the Lord your God has given to you to possess." So in this context, this is how the passage should read. You shall not remove your neighbor's landmark, which the men of old have set, in your inheritance which you will inherit in the land that the Lord your God is giving you to possess. One witness shall not rise against a man concerning any iniquity or any sin that he commits. By the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses the matter shall be established. It has nothing to do with assaulting a victim at all. Leave it to a real estate corporation to interpret the Bible from a property rights perspective. You might wonder if the Bible contains moral guidance for this type of situation. Yes, it does. Just 3 chapters later, in chapter 22, verses 25 through 27 say, "But if a man finds a betrothed young woman in the countryside, and the man forces her and lies with her, then only the man who lay with her shall die. But you shall do nothing to the young woman. There is in the young woman no sin deserving of death. For just as when a man rises against his neighbor and kills him, even so is this matter. For he found her in the countryside, and the betrothed young woman cried out, but there was no one to save her." It clearly states that the word of the victim is enough to convict the perpetrator. But Pete, you might be thinking, that's about a betrothed woman, not a child. You're right. Do you really want to know what moral guidance the Bible gives about assaulting a child? It's in verses 28 and 29. "If a man finds a young woman who is a virgin, who is not betrothed, and he seizes her and lies with her, and they are found out, then the man who lay with her shall give to the young woman's father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife because he has humbled her. He shall not be permitted to divorce her all his days." I don't think that would be acceptable in most parts of the world today. Well, maybe in Israel. They still use the shekel, but I digress. So there's 3 recent news stories about Jehovah's Witnesses and their legal issues. From thousands of potential conscientious objectors in Ukraine to small numbers of individuals in Russia, and the many individuals globally being arrested for CSA despite the protection of the governing body's policies. The stories that can be used by the governing body as propaganda appear on jw.org, complete with their lies. The stories that make the organization look bad never get mentioned on the site. That is all part of the information control the governing body uses to control their cult members. Make no bones about it, The Jehovah's Witnesses are a deceitful, dangerous, and deadly cult. To see how they deceive cult members about the Russia situation, watch this video next.